안녕하십니까. 저는
Hello,
국립외교원 김현욱
my name
교수입니다.
is Kim Hyun-wook. I'm a professor at the Korea National Diplomatic Academy.
포럼에서
It's an honor to be part of KGFP 2021. This is the second day of the forum, and this session will be dealing with some important topics. As a matter of fact, the title of this session is Evaluation of 10 Years of the Kim Jong Un Regime, Politics and Foreign Affairs.
하고 있습니다. 본 세션이 열리게 된 어떤
So, let me just tell you the story behind the opening of this session. So it's been 10 years since Kim Jong Un took office. And so we'd like to take a look at what has happened in North Korean politics and foreign affairs and share our outlook on the future. So in terms of politics, Kim Jong-un created his Monolithic Rule and was able to make some significant achievements. And we would like to analyze the political process leading up to today. And in terms of foreign affairs, we would like to take a look at the intentions and also the patterns of its denuclearization diplomacy, as well as some countermeasures that we can come up with. So that was the purpose of this session. We have 2 presenters and 4 discussants. First presenter is Mr. Oh Kyung-sub, Dr. Oh Kyung-sub, who is a research fellow at Korea Institute for National Unification. So he worked as a research fellow at the Center of North Korean Studies in Sejong Institute, and now he is a research fellow at the North Korea Research Division at the Korea Institute for National Unification. His primary research areas are North Korean politics, North Korean elites, South Korea strategy on North Korea, and inter-Korean relations. Second presenter is Mr. Kim JinHa, Dr. Kim JinHa, also at KNU. So he received his PhD in political science from Chicago University. He served as research director of the Korean Association of International Studies, director of the Planning and Coordination Division at KNU, and so on. Let me introduce our discussants. Dr. Park Hyung-jung, who's a distinguished research fellow at Korea Institute for National Unification. He used to be an expert member of Unification Preparation Committee and the ROK Germany Joint Advisory Council and Foreign Policy for Unification. He was an Eisenhower Fellow and also a visiting fellow at the Center for East Asian Policy Studies at Brookings. Next is Mr. Lee Seung-yeol, senior researcher at National Assembly Research Service. He used to be a guest researcher at the Institute for Security and Development Policy in Sweden and received his PhD in North Korean Studies from the Graduate School of University of North Korean Studies. Next, Dr. Jung Go-yeon, assistant professor at Kangwon National University. She studied political science from the University of California, where she obtained her PhD, and she was a visiting professor at the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Last discussant is Professor Nishio Junya, who is a professor at Keio University. He is a director of the Center for Contemporary Korean Studies at Keio, and he served as a research fellow at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, and so on. He obtained his PhD in political science from Yonsei University in South Korea. So first of all, we would like to listen to the presentation by Dr. Oh Kyung-sub. I will give you about 15 minutes for your presentation. Please. Hello, as introduced, my name is Oh Kyung-sub from KNU. So the title of my presentation is Evaluation of the Kim Jong-un's ruling of the last 10 years, Politics and Diplomacy. So it's about the ruling of Kim Jong-un for the past 10 years, and it's mostly going to deal with the key words that represent his ruling for the last 10 years. So as I was doing my analysis, I would like to touch upon, first of all, Kim Jong-un's monolithic ruling to make an assessment of his politics for the past 10 years. And At party congress and official gatherings, Kim Jong Un has made many statements himself, and I made my analysis based on them. So for the past 10 years, we can basically summarize the past 10 years into three categories: the goal of nation and strategic goal, and two key politics. His national goal is the complete victory of socialism. The strategic goal is building a powerful socialist nation which is comprised of ideology, politics, military, and economy. So in terms of ideology, powerful nation, North Korea has achieved that to some extent, but in terms of economy, it still has a long way to go. So the two key policies are building nuclear power, which is meeting with success, as you know. And in terms of developing its economy, I will mention this further in my later in my presentation, but that's the greatest weakness of the Kim Jong Un regime. So let's take a look at the specific goals of North Korean politics. So first of all, it's about establishing the monolithic guidance system of Kim Jong Un, securing his authority as the leader or 수령, and inducing loyalty from the elites and the people. So when we look at related studies, dictators in history have put a great amount of importance between the relationship between people and the leader, and also resolving the conflict between the leader and the elite. And so therefore, Kim Jong-un's regime focuses on inducing loyalty from both the elites and the people. So the Kim Jong-un regime has set many key policies on that. And for the past 10 years, while establishing monolithic guidance system, he consolidated his power. And the reason why he was able to do so, or the key elements behind as to how he was able to do so, is that he first of all reorganized the dominant coalition or the ruling association at a very fast pace. So he replaced all his key officials or cadres into those whom he could fully trust. So he was able to establish a loyal elite class, which was key to consolidating his power. And another element behind that is he maintained the existing policy for the elites to induce loyalty from them. And third of all, in the process of reorganizing the ruling association, he did carry out extensive purge, and that actually was a key to inducing elite loyalty. And now to the third element. So right before Kim Jong-un succeeded power, before Kim Jong-il died, there was the Arab Spring movement, and that has some ramifications in North Korea, I believe. So to induce support from the people, North Korean regime actually carried out some related tasks. If you look at some related documents, there are lots of policies that have been pursued regarding people to induce support from the people. So I will elaborate in the later part of my presentation. So at the beginning of his power, Kim Jong-un had faced instability in terms of his authority because he only had 3 years to prepare to become the leader of North Korea, which is a very short amount of time, and he had no experience of doing politics and lacked political achievements. So in relation to power succession in a totalitarian government, usually if there is no successor, the uncertainty surrounding power succession increases, but that was not the case for North Korea. Actually, as a matter of fact, from 1946 to 2012, after 79 dictators died from natural causes, we saw 87% of totalitarian government retaining their power, while 4% were changed into democratic regime. And there have been related studies regarding this. Because Kim Jong Un was appointed as a successor, there were no power struggles in North Korea. And at the initial phase of his rule, if he did not carry out a reign of terror and carry out extensive purges, he probably would have faced much instability. But due to his strategy of reign of power and purges, he was able to consolidate his power. So the strategy for stabilizing Kim Jong-un's rule is just a repetition of what I just said earlier, so I will summarize. So establishing a system of monolithic rule for Kim Jong-un would guarantee legitimacy for Kim Jong-un as the leader of North Korea. So it's about Miranda and credenda theory. And it is also closely related to the soft power theory as well. In terms of yielding power, you would induce the followers to voluntarily obey. And North Korea has done a great job of doing so. Kim Jong-il did so, and Kim Jong-un is doing so as well. So Miranda is about praise of power, and credenda is about trust in power. So these ideology works or ideological tasks have been carried out well in North Korea. And of course, the Mount Baekdu bloodline also played a great part. People are revering Kim Jong-un as the Suryang of North Korea, who inherited the Mount Baekdu bloodline. And also Kim Jong-un followed his or emulated his predecessors to consolidate his power. And from 2012 to 2015, Kim Jong-un broadened his contact with the people. He gave field guidances to places where people work. The Rodong Shinmun almost on a daily basis published articles about how Kim Jong-un made field guidances. As a matter of fact, about 20 of these field guidances happened from April to November of 2012. So all of this is for the reason of trying to induce support from the people and the elite. So the elite control and management strategy can be categorized into three. First of all, there is the elite monitoring and control through monitoring organs. And the Kim Jong-un reorganized the ruling association or the patrons, his existing patrons, into people whom he could trust. So for example, there was the purging of Jang Song-taek, or the execution of Jang Song-taek. And third is a demand for absolute loyalty towards Kim Jong-un. As for elite monitoring, there are many monitoring and surveillance organizations functioning. So you probably know about this already. There's a lot of activities going on to keep the elites in check, such as trailing and monitoring and wiretapping and so on. As for the reorganization of the patrons of ruling association, the patrons are completely comprised of those who are absolutely loyal to Kim Jong-un. So when we take a look at the period from 2012 to 2016, about 64.4% of these elites in the ruling association were replaced by new people. So by appointing his people into top positions, he was able to consolidate his power. And of course, Kim Jong-un demands loyalty from the cadres. And this has been stressed repeatedly at various official functions. So if you look at some of the demands he makes of the elites, they would have to make uncompromising struggles against anything that undermines the leader's authority, and to make sure that status seekers or go-getters or schemers will not meddle in elite matters and so on. And then there are strategies to control and manage the people. So this strategy can be divided into two categories. So first of all, there is the traditional method of the 성분 class. So the 성분 class is used to monitor the people. As a matter of fact, people are monitored so strongly. There are double, triple monitoring system in place, and any political oppositioners would be punished severely and brutally. So it's very difficult for people to defy against Kim Jong Un. And as mentioned earlier, after the Arab Spring, Kim Jong Un rose to power. So a massive public opposition would make the North Korean region collapse, and Kim Jong Un knew that. And therefore, he demanded loyalty from the people and the elites, and at the same time kept reminding the elites that they need to love the people and serve the people. So during the 8th Congress, he stipulates that the party's basic politics would be centered on people first principle, and that the guidance ideology would be that everything is for the people and that everything would be based on the people. So people first principle is being emphasized by Kim Jong Un, but in reality, as you can see from the sanctions, and also many news of these human rights violation issues in North Korea, perhaps this principle is not being carried out as it needs to be. And of course, Kim Jong Un has emphasized enhancing people's livelihoods. In his New Year's addresses, he said solving food problem for the people is an urgent issue, and that he actually felt saddened that he was not able to improve people's livelihoods, and that he wishes for the people to wear nice clothes and eat white rice and eat meat broth. This is actually something that was emphasized by his predecessors. But anyway, he would say all those things during various official functions. As a matter of fact, in 2021, during the 8th Party Congress, actually in the first half of the year, there were 3 plenary sessions, and in every session, Kim Jong-un emphasized that people's livelihood must be improved, especially through economic development. But on the other hand, ideology education is being reinforced in North Korea. So the ideology education is aimed at inducing voluntary loyalty from the people and the elites. What's important here is that it continues to advocate the revolutionary accomplishments of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, and also emphasizes the monolithic rule of the party and the people first principle, and it also advocates aggressive ideology projects. And these ideological education projects are about people's praising of Kim Jong-un and instilling a sense of nationalism amongst the people and so on. So I would say that during the past 10 years, Kim Jong-un was able to establish a monolithic rule system and stabilization of his authority, and that was due mostly to purging, monitoring, and oppression. And he purged around 260 key cadres and reorganized the ruling association to stabilize his power. And with regards to public opposition, that's actually something that's very minor in North Korea, I believe. And in terms of building nuclear power, I believe that met with success. At the 8th Party Congress, North Korea declared that it was successful in advancing nuclear technology and making nukes smaller and lighter, and also in standardization. However, the 5-year National Economic Development Plan failed due to sanctions and COVID-19 closing borders down. So food and economic crises are continuing, and North Korea has not yet come up with solutions except for self-reliance or self-rehabilitation. But self-rehabilitation alone cannot overcome this issue. So while Kim Jong Un's power is rather stable in North Korea, these crises can be the determining factors of whether this power would continue for Kim Jong Un. So these are some weaknesses of North Korean regime. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much, Dr. Oh. So you talked about how Kim Jong Un's power has been consolidated for the past 10 years. You touched upon some key points. Thank you very much. So I do have some questions, but I will ask them later.
We would like to invite Dr. Kim JinHa, Senior Research Fellow at KINU, for his presentation. Good afternoon. As introduced, I'm Kim JinHa. It's been quite some time I've seen the moderator. Hello. Today, I will be looking back at 10 years of the Kim Jong-un regime with a focus on nuclear diplomacy. Of the research topics that I'm involved in is the topic of the Kim Jong-un regime's nuclear diplomacy. Of course, North Korea's China policy is important, but I chose this topic because I am currently researching this topic, and I believe that we are at a critical juncture when it comes to the nuclear diplomacy. So this is why I have prepared this topic. So here is an overview of my presentation. Korea, U.S. Are the subject of Kim Jong-un's foreign policy, and there are two main patterns when it comes to North Korea's foreign policy. You either have the confrontation phase or the negotiation phase. In the confrontation phase, you have the provocations and you have the sanctions. And in the negotiation phase, this was evident in the Trump administration. You can see that there was two occasions in which the two leaders met with a rather top-down, through a rather top-down method. One of the key features of the confrontational phase is that North Korea pushes ahead with its nuclear test, and it actually completes some of its nuclear programs. So they say that North Korea has a minimum 30 to a maximum 100 nuclear weapons. And it was during this period, the first confrontational phase, that North Korea makes a lot of progress when it comes to nuclear tests. And then this led to stronger sanctions. So on the surface, during this phase, there was extreme confrontation, and many people were concerned that war could break out. I didn't think so, but many people thought that war could break out. So the conflict really came head to head, and South Korea played the mediator and was able to resolve the situation. And President Trump also pursued a grand bargain, though, and for perhaps personal purposes. And that's how the next phase became the peace and appeasement campaign. And so now we are at a stalemate, and all parties are waiting and seeing what the other party will come up with. This is an analysis of different documents and video recordings of what is coming out of North Korea, statements and video recordings. And this is an analysis of key words that were used in official discourse by year. you can see that in 2017, the word peace was used quite frequently. So although you see the keyword peace as one of the most frequently mentioned words in 2017, it was not used in the context of peace. Rather, it was mentioned when Kim Jong Un was talking about war. And you can see that towards 2019 and 2020, Kim Jong Un focuses on the party. And here you can see the word clouds. So you can see that in the past 10 years, Kim Jong Un has used the word self-reliance a lot. So before 2018, you can see that he uses the word international, self-reliance, solidarity, nuclear war a lot more often than he does post 2018. After 2018, you can see that they are congratulating the fact that the crisis in 2017 was averted, and they pinned this as their own achievement. And you can see that some of the keywords in this period is diplomacy and chairman. So as I mentioned earlier, in the first phase, in the first confrontational phase, there were a lot of nuclear tests, which were followed by many sanctions being put into place. And then in the second phase, which includes the first year of the Trump administration, there was a lot of tension, and there was a sort of chicken game going on between DPRK and the U.S. So until early 2017, or actually until December 2017, you can see that for the first portion of his rule, there was a lot of confrontation, but once the nuclear program was somewhat completed, he opens up a phase of dialogue and appeasement. And you can say that the Singapore summit was really the pinnacle of the appeasement and negotiation phase. As Dr. Oh mentioned, Kim Jong Un faced issue with legitimacy, and he also had to reorganize the elite, and he had to ensure his legitimacy. I think one of the important ways of gaining legitimacy for Kim Jong Un was to complete the nuclear program, and this was the best way to gain his legitimacy, because there's no way he could suddenly turn the economy around. So the nuclear program and its commitment to the nuclear program and the reaction from the outside world really fed into North Korea completing its nuclear program. And I'm going to skip the next part because we're all familiar with this. I believe that North Korea was not really interested in this part either. And so the focus in the first phase was that North Korea wanted to complete the nuclear program for various reasons. And this was during the Obama administration, and at the time, the Obama administration chose to go down the path of strategic patience. So, in a way, the U.S. really took his hands off the wheel when it came to North Korea at this phase. And North Korea at this time, as I mentioned, used the nuclear program to solidify the base of its leadership. And it also convinced the people that it needed nuclear weapons to deter a possible attack from the U.S. and South Korea. And you will see that the discourse has changed very recently from this. Now that North Korea has a substantial nuclear weapons program, now it has entered a negotiation phase at this time. And of course, at the time, the Trump administration reacted very strongly with words such as fire and fury. We don't have a lot of time, but let me go through the impact that the enhanced nuclear capabilities had on North Korea. You can say that now North Korea's survivability has increased. So in the past, if the nuclear weapons were just simply a leverage for negotiations, now it presents a real threat. And now North Korea has secured capability to escalate into nuclear war. And so this is a real card. And with ICBMs being tested, now the North Korea has a little bit more ammunition. And so in 2018, Kim Jong Un started down the path of negotiation and appeasement, and this led to the Pyeongchang Olympic with North Korea. And of course, the Trump administration at that time also wanted to produce tangible results, and the needs of these two leaders met, and this brings in and ushers in a real period of peace and appeasement. Now, just to take a look at why this phase was successful, I think the North was very smart. The Trump administration was very loud in the first phase. They talked as if they were going to attack North Korea immediately, and now they had to put the money where their mouth was. And now it was a huge burden on Trump to live up to his words. And just when the Trump administration was facing this kind of pressure, North Korea turned into dialogue mode. And however, the Hanoi summit fell apart. Let's take a look at why it fell apart. I think there was a misunderstanding, or perhaps they knew what each other wanted, and they knew that it was going to fall apart, but none of them wanted the spotlight anymore as much. North Korea was willing to give up Yongbyon for lifting of sanctions. And for Trump, this was a burden. And he wanted to get a better deal, a bigger deal from North Korea. And that is why the talks fell apart. I'm sure that the Hanoi talks fell apart largely, again, because of the rigidity of the regime. The working level officials didn't have enough leeway to counter some of the proposals made by the U.S. After the Hanoi summit fell apart and the Trump administration stepped down, this led to a conundrum for North Korea. They couldn't suddenly abandon the appeasement phase or negotiation phase and suddenly turn to the confrontation phase. In particular, sanctions have become protracted in North Korea, and it seems that North Korea is facing very grave difficulties within. And so that is why the North it has gone into a wait-and-see period, and they have mentioned that they will use a principle of strength to strength, goodwill to goodwill in its Eighth Party Congress. And you can see that the Biden administration looked into North Korea policies. And there was a lot of rhetoric. The Biden administration said that it will take a calibrated, a pragmatic approach. But I believe that if negotiations do occur, it will be in a phased approach. And perhaps they will pursue something that looks very similar to the Iran nuke deal. So it will be consecutively phased approach, and the ultimate goal will be nuclear dismantlement. But I am skeptical as to whether we can even get that far. Recently, North Korea has restarted the Yongbyon facility, and it's really putting pressure on the U.S., alluding that it can go back to the past. So North Korea right now is just waiting and seeing. It's waiting and seeing what the Biden administration is going to come up with. And they are making it clear that they will make their position clear once they know, and the Biden administration makes clear what they are going to offer. First of all, after Kim Jong Un took power, the focus was on developing nuclear weapons, and so they engaged in nuclear diplomacy. And this nuclear diplomacy can be categorized into two phases: a confrontational phase and the peace and appeasement phase. And with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Kim. I'm going to turn the mic over to the discussants. Before I do that, I want to ask two questions, one for Dr. Oh and one for Dr. Kim.
So there are general questions. Dr. Oh, so you said that Kim Jong Un was able to consolidate and stabilize his power. But given the recent Hanoi and Singapore talks or agreements or negotiations with the United States, North Korea probably faces some concerns with regards to its foreign policy. Is it going to open up to enhance people's livelihood, developing its economy, but that could actually lead to deterioration of his power. So I'm sure Kim Jong Un is facing a dilemma at the moment. So what kind of concerns do you think Kim Jong Un has with regards to North Korea's foreign policy, and what are your outlooks or prospects?
Dr. Kim, towards the end of your presentation, you mentioned that the North restarted its Yongbyon facility. And you also stated that the DPRK-US negotiations or talks are at a stalemate. What do you think are the possibilities of a provocation by the North, red line provocation? And now I would like to invite Mr. Park Kyung-jung for his comments. I believe that we do have some time, so I think I can give our discussants maybe 10 to 12, 13 minutes for their comments.
So thank you for that generous allocation of time. And I haven't had time to say hello to a lot of you. It's been a while since we met, and I'm sure you are all doing well. So let me begin my remarks. So thank you for the wonderful two presentations. So perhaps my remark can complement those two presentations. And perhaps you could also find some points of, I guess you could say, some discussions or potential discussions by listening to my comments. So with regards to North Korea's foreign policy and nuclear policies, North Korea's foreign policy is a continuum of its domestic policy. I think we could say that. So for example, to secure his legitimacy, Kim Jong Un accelerated the development of nuclear program, and therefore we could also say that the foreign policy is a continuum of its domestic policy. However, actually, it could be the opposite too. So the foreign policy or the international landscape can actually influence the shaping of the domestic policy as well. So it could be outside in or inside out. So I would say that outside in is just a response to what's happening outside. And inside out is a response to what's happening outside too. And second, with regards to North Korea's foreign policy, if we are to understand that, North Korea, I believe we need to think under the premise that North Korea is being very realistic when it comes to its foreign policy, that it's seeking for power growth. And it's not about being in a defensive mode, but North Korea is seeking hegemony in the region. And in terms of its military, when the other party steps back, North Korea requests a lot more than it did before. So it's not about securing safety by persuading other countries, but it's about seizing other countries to guarantee its own safety. So with those basic frames in mind, if we make analysis of North Korea, a lot of things would become clear. And another thing I would like to make a comment on is that North Korea's foreign policy has actually changed since 2009. So prior to 2009 and after 2009, we see a significant difference in the policies in three ways, actually. It's not a denuclearization negotiations anymore, but enhancement of its nuclear missile capability. Second is pursuing of a hostile policy against South Korea. And third is strengthening of monitoring against the public. So these are three significant changes that happened in North Korea's domestic policy, and that reshaped politics in North Korea. So both foreign policy and domestic policy have changed, and to pursue those policies, the political landscape of North Korea changed entirely, and that cycle has continued since 2009. And after 2009, North Korea's history can be divided into two steps, or maybe 5 steps even. So from 2009 to 2017, that's the first step. In this step, the ultimate strategic goal is to complete its nuclear power. So that's the top goal of North Korea. Everything else is just a sub-goal, I guess you can say. The sub-goals are in service to the top and ultimate goal. The second period, or second step, I guess you can say, is after 2008, the political situation after 2008. So it's about seeking security and diplomacy policies based on the premise that it is a de facto nuclear state. So as a nuclear power, a strategic nuclear power, North Korea seeks to raise its prestige and shape its political and also foreign and security policies based on that premise. So during the 8th Party Congress, North Korea announced new policies. So from 2009 to 2017, the ultimate and top goal is to make sure that it completes its nuclear power. And from 2018, North Korea is aimed to raise its prestige as a nuclear power, strategic nuclear power. And there's also a period of dual power, I guess you can say. So there's the existing power and another power that follow Kim Jong Un. So politics had two parts, and North Korean power or authority scheme also had two parts to it. And from 2012 to 2015, we saw that in the power structure, North Korea tried to do away with the what's remaining in the military first policy. So it sought to eradicate military first policy. So from 2009 to 2011, I said there has been a dual track of power in Korea. And the first track is to expand cooperation with China. So at the end of his term, Kim Jong-il made efforts to improve relations with China. And second is to revive the economy by using domestic markets. And third, it's about making compromises with South Korea and the United States. So there are some agreements related to that. And during the Lee administration, Kim Jong-un actually tried to have a summit talk with South Korea. So we have that. And on the other hand, there is the Kim Jong-un line, I guess you could say. First of all, it's about prioritizing North Korea's nuclear capability. And everything else is in service to that. But after Kim Jong-un took power, all of this has not been concretely set in place. But Kim Jong-un was able to concretize his power after executing Chang Song-taek. So after driving Chang Song-taek out, Kim Jong-un was able to begin the process of concretizing his power. So in the past, up until 2012, two tracks of power were in clash with one another. But starting from then up until 2015, Kim Jong-un has made sure that his power would become consolidated. And North Korea probably was very thorough in planning the timeline for its nuclear capability development. North Korea probably thought of all the technical aspects that are involved and calculated what the outside responses would be. So North Korea probably thought of all the strategies and plans to become a de facto nuclear state. And once the nuclear program becomes complete, North Korea probably also calculated that it would turn to a tactic of appeasement as well. So all of this has been pre-planned by North Korea. And up until 2017, if you look at North Korea's military policy, so the military played a core role. So a forceful unification and full-out war is suddenly emphasized, and there are also policies that would combine conventional power and nuclear power. And North Korea became very aggressive in deploying armed means when there were that landmine conflict between the two Koreas and so on. And when we think about this from a North Korean viewpoint, if I carry out these aggressive nuclear and missile tests, how would the other parties respond? Would they counter? Would they make counter aggressions? That would have to be in his calculus. And to curb that counter response, North Korea would have to be very aggressive. So its aggressive attitude is aimed at curbing the other's aggressive attitude and behavior. And at the 8th Party Congress, a new track was completed. And if you take a look at that, it talks about the modernization of nuclear power as well as selective modernization of conventional power. These two goals are probably two of the top goals of North Korea today. And North Korea is probably confident that it can achieve these two goals. The reason why I think so is because based on its experience, North Korea actually steps back when it becomes disadvantageous in terms of use of force. But whenever North Korea succeeds in aggressive provocation in which the other does not take an aggressive response, it responds with a bigger, more aggressive provocation. So that's why North Korea is very confident that it can achieve its dual goal of nuclear and conventional power development. So these are the future goals set out at the 8th Party Congress, and North Korea probably has specific timelines for that based on its past experiences. Even when I make these aggressive provocations, the US and the Republic of Korea will eventually succumb. These are probably part of Kim Jong Un's calculus. Thank you.
박사님.
Thank you very much, Dr. Park. You gave us a specific overview of North Korea's foreign policy. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Lee Seung-yeol from the National Assembly Research Service. You have about 10 to 11 minutes. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Sometimes when I use this room, the system is a bit unstable. If I disappear suddenly during my comment, please understand. I have my cell phone as backup. I hope that I'll be able to save myself from disappearing. Dr. Oh talked about the 10 years of Kim Jong Un regime.
So I like to give my comments on that. So Dr. Oh said that Kim Jong Un's monolithic rule for the past 10 years was established successfully, but there are still risk factors remaining in terms of its economy. And I agree with that mostly, but I think we also need to look at this from a different lens. So let me approach it from a different point of view. So in conclusion, for the past 10 years, what has been the key to Kim Jong Un's monolithic rule? It was about the leader ideology and revolutionary tasks and so on. So the Juche ideology of Kim Il-sung and military first ideology of Kim Jong-il are there. And then there is the guidance policy of Kim Jong-un. So, and with regards to that, can the guidance policy of Kim Jong-un become the ruling policy of North Korea that replaces Juche and military first policies? Has that happened? We need to raise questions with regards to that. Although it's been 10 years since Kim Jong-un took office, I'm not sure if Kim Jong-un has made a policy, a dominant policy that he could call confidently of his own. And with regards to the ruling system, the ruling is done by the elites in North Korea. And during Kim Jong, you talked about the reign of terror. And from 2012, about 250 to 260 elites have been purged up until 2016. And looking at that, if we look at how Kim Jong-il has shaped his guiding policy, it began in 1974. And as a matter of fact, he had a long time to receive lessons to become the successor. And after that, Kim Jong-un took power. But there has not been a lot of elite changes when it moved from the Kim Il-sung times to Kim Jong-il times. But if you look at from Kim Jong-il to Kim Jong-un times, lots of key cadres have been executed and purged, like Chang Song-taek and Lee Young-ho. Except for Choi Yong-hae, the elite ruling class or the dominant ruling association has completely changed. It looks like the internet connection has become unstable. Can you hear us, Dr. Lee? Your screen is frozen. Dr. Lee, can you hear us? So I believe that he's trying to log in with a different device. Can you hear me? Yes, we can. Okay, so I will use this device. The internet system is rather unstable here. Can you hear me well now? Yes, we can.
예, 여기서 보면 제가 어디까지 아까 지배체제에서 잠깐 멈춰진 것 같은데
So let's go back to the ruling system.
김정은 시대의
So
지배체제 구조의
the ruling structure of the Kim Jong Un regime is characterized by frequent purges. I think you need to turn one off, Dr. Lee. Yes, you need to use a single device.
지금 음서고가 되어 계십니다.
You are on mute?
이제 이런 경우는 처음인데
I'm sorry, this is the first time that it has happened to me. Anyway, I will continue to speak. So with regards to the ruling system, there has been frequent purges and reign of terror. And ultimately, I don't think they were the success factor behind Kim Jong-un's consolidation of power. Rather, they were factors of failure. Because if we look at the elite structure and what's really behind it, as said earlier, so there was a shift in power from the military to the party and purging of Yeong and Chae and key cadres. And this is actually an outcome of power struggle among the elites, I believe. But the problem is, within these changes, how can does Kim Jong-un, and this also involves the economy, power struggle over the economy as well. And does Kim Jong-un know about this? To what extent? So Jang Suk-taek is the one who took the authoritative power away from the military, and the guidance and the guidance and organizational department. Also obtained the power over the North Korean economy. So we would have to say that because of these struggle for economic interest between the elites, that was the factor leading up to the purges of the elites. So on the outside, we could say that these purges and executions were about reorganizing the power structure. But underneath the surface, these may actually bring about instability to the structure itself. So completing the nuclear capability of North Korea, yes, it would reinforce Kim Jong-un regime. But its revolutionary task is not about nuclear power alone. It's about developing economy as well. Because North Korea pursues a dual-track policy of developing nuclear power and economy together. But since 2016, in the process of leading up to completing its nuclear power, there have been international sanctions and also the recent COVID pandemic that wreaked havoc on its economy. So North Korea's capability has deteriorated significantly. So under the Kim Jong-un regime, there have been many crises, but is the crisis management capability really set in place in the Kim Jong-un regime? And because I think the crisis management capability of the Kim Jong-un regime has been deteriorated. So whether it be the revolutionary tasks or the ruling system or the guidance system and so on, yes, Kim Jong-un has been successful in dealing with those, but I wonder if he has a full grasp of what is happening under the surface. So a risk management capability, like I said, is deteriorating in North Korea. So we need to take that into consideration when making assessments of Kim Jong-un's rule for the past 10 years. Thank you.
예, 이승열 박사. 박사님께서
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. He raised some very interesting points, interesting topics for discussion later on. He talked about the purging, and he talked about how various parties within North Korea are fighting over benefits and power, and this is leading to a weakening of the North's ability to respond flexibly to crisis. Next, we would like to invite Dr. Chung Gu-yeon from Gangwon University. Good afternoon. I am Chung Gu-yeon, as introduced. Thank you for the invitation to this forum. It's been a while since I've met Dr. Oh, Dr. Park, and Dr. Kim. I read all your papers in advance. I think you're in the final stages of writing your papers, and I have a few questions for you and some points that I would like to discuss with you, and I would like to use my time to share this with you. So for quite a long time, I read Dr. Kim's presentation material. The discourse of North Korea's foreign policy had been focused on nuclearization. If North Korea's diplomacy was focused on acquiring nuclear weapons, then from 2017 and around that period, there were many different phases that you outlined in your paper. Dr. Chung, I think you need to speak slowly. Your connection is unstable. So North Korea's strategic goal was to acquire nuclear weapons.
화면이 자꾸 끊깁니다, 정 교수님.
Your screen is frozen at this point.
네. 지금도 끊기시나요?
지금 괜찮은데 예.
You're okay now, but perhaps we can try again. Is it better? So you outlined the different phases, and it would help if you can specifically pinpoint the tactical goals for each phase. As mentioned by all the speakers, perhaps the tactical strategies and the way that North Korea responded to certain crises during each phase, if highlighted in your paper, would be very helpful. If you look at your slides, you have divided this period into 4 different periods. In each of these phases, North Korea pursued its ultimate goal of acquiring nuclear weapons. And do you think that it achieved its goal that it set out during these 4 separate periods? So in each phase, do you think that North Korea was successful in achieving its diplomatic goals from the nuclear diplomacy perspective? And then you carried out an analysis of the discourse that went on in North Korea. It's a complicated process. What I wanted to know was that there is a big difference before and after 2016. The nuclear discourse itself doesn't come out as often. Do you think that there is a possibility that North Korea refrained from promoting a nuclear discourse within? And if so, what strategy do you think is behind North Korea not engaging so much in a nuclear discourse? And
17년, 18년부터 좀 더
if you look at 2017 and 2018 and 2019, during the appeasement phase, during the peace phase, you can see that he mentions in the discourse peace a lot. Do you find a similar pattern in the period post-2017 to the period pre-17? I think you wanted me to speak and touch upon the U.S. side. And the Biden administration has not put forth, as mentioned by many people, very specific actions or measures. The big frame, of course, has been set with deterrence and diplomacy. And as mentioned earlier, Biden administration is probably somewhere between the grand bargain and a strategic patience, and it has said that it will look for a calibrated and phased approach. If you look at the difference between the Biden administration and Trump administration North Korea policy, you can see the big differences is China's role. Trump administration was focused on putting pressure on China and North Korea. Of course, if you look at China-U.S. relations, and China does still have influence over North Korea. If you look at the U.S., it is not really consulting with China regarding North Korea. Of course, it acknowledges the influence and the role that China can play, but it is not coordinating in order to resolve the issue between China and North Korea. And so China has a step-by-step approach, which it proposed earlier.
박사님께서 얘기하듯이 이제 뭐
As you mentioned, when we take the phased approach, I think that the only comparable example would be Iran, and that's why we keep talking about Iran. I think that the Biden administration is quite skeptical about the phased approach. If you take the phased approach, you have to give something and get something back in return. And there is actually a big side effect to that. And I think that's the U.S. position. So, of course, they are pursuing something similar to a phased approach. But I don't think that they will take exactly the path that Iran took, like the JCPO. And one concern is that, of course, the U.S. prioritizes North Korea, but in the bigger picture, the security environment in the West Pacific region is much more important. And that's why there is a focus on deterrence policy. The deterrence in the West Pacific for the U.S. is to strengthen the allies in this region so that it can balance and counter China.
어떤 억지 역량을 강화시킨 가장 큰 목표다라고 한다면 한반도 역시
And then Korea will not be free from such a strategy either.
대화나 대화에서 좀 더
예, 감사합니다. 좀
Thank you very much. The connection was not as stable as we had hoped for, but thank you for your comments. You talked about the North Korea policy of the Biden administration. Thank you for your comments. Lastly, I would like to invite Professor Nishino Junya. You have about 10 minutes.
그러니까 일본
Hello, my name is Nishio Junya from KU University. Thank you for inviting me to this session. So everyone had very insightful input.
Thank you for your presentation, the two speakers.
So with regards to Dr. Oh's presentation, I saw the presentation materials in advance, and after listening to your presentation, I felt something that's very similar to what Dr. Lee said with regards to the reorganization of the ruling association. Yes, many cadres have been replaced, but I'm not sure if that led to stability of Kim Jong Un's rule, or perhaps he still remained uncertain of his power, that he kept have to replace the cadres during the 7th Party Congress. If we compare the 7th and 8th Party Congress, people who are left at the standing committee is just basically Choi Ryong-hae. Everyone else was replaced. And then things are quite similar for Lee Byung-chul as well. So I would say that reorganization of the ruling association actually leads to instability rather than securing stability. And because there have been frequent reshuffling of the personnel, perhaps North Korea is running out of people to appoint in key positions. So then, how can Kim Jong-un appoint someone in the key position, especially after Choi Ryong-hae steps down? Perhaps you could elaborate. Yeah, I would like to hear your personal thoughts on that. And with regards to the guidance ideology or ruling ideology, as said by Dr. Park earlier, so getting rid of the remaining traces of military force policy was one of the things that North Korea did. And then, in that sense, how would North Korea or Kim Jong-un define its guidance ideology? Given that the military first policy has been eradicated completely, the end of military first policy means that the military no longer plays a key role in the politics. Would that be correct to understand it in this way? Or is there something else, something more than that? So, personally, lots of things are still unclear for me. So when we say that it's the end of the military first policy and that North Korea is moving towards the direction of a party-centered rule, that's just a change in the ruling or political system. But I wonder how the ideology of North Korea is going to change in line with the eradication of the military first policy. And as Dr. Lee said earlier, people first policy. So Kim Il-sungism and Kim Jong-ilism Kim Il-sungism and Kim Jong-ilism equal to people first policy, or are they two different things? Can you elaborate on that?
As for Dr. Kim JinHa, thank you for your presentation. Actually, if you look at the foreign policy of Kim Jong-un for the past 10 years, especially its U.S. policy, there are some questions I struggle to find the answer to. So I would like to take the opportunity to ask those questions. First is, since 2018, you said that North Korea went into the negotiation phase. And after the Singapore summit was over, I think for about 2 months, it seemed like they were pursuing the end of war declaration. And then it changed its demand drastically in October. And that is my understanding of the situation in 2018. If you look at the media outlets, I think that is actually what happened. But I'm finding it hard to understand why the North suddenly drastically changed its demands. Perhaps it demanded or wanted economic sanctions lifted first, but it stayed mum because of the end of war declaration by Moon Jae-in government, or perhaps later on because the Moon Jae-in administration made it clear that it was a symbolic political gesture, it decided that it needed to pursue and demand economic sanctions lifting. Or perhaps it needs to convince other parties, and that's why it had to demand for a lifting of sanctions. So, Dr. Kim, do you think that this was a negotiation tactic with its negotiations with the U.S.? I would like to hear your take on this matter. And I had another question for you, but it seems to have slipped my mind, so I will ask the question, perhaps if we have more time later. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nishino. We do have some time left at our hand. So there were questions that Dr. Chung raised, and in relation to that question, I have a thought. So I think the circumstances right now is becoming similar to back in 2009 when North Korea conducted its second nuclear test. So, North Korea and China relations are becoming more intimate, and U.S. and China are engaged in a conflict. And in that circumstance, North Korea-U.S. negotiation is not showing any signs of progress. So, in a time when China's support for North Korea is so strong, what kind of diplomatic choices will North Korea make going forward? I am curious. Maybe the presenters can address this question. Dr. Nishino also talked about some important things. What does the getting rid of the traces of military first policy imply? So, does that just mean that the power focused on Kim Jong-il is moved, or military moved to the party? Or does that imply a political or ideological change? Maybe it could raise some expectations on opening up and reform. But as you know, North Korea keeps on emphasizing self-rehabilitation. So anyway, what kind of political and ideological implication does the eradication of military first policy has? And getting rid of the hostile policy towards the United States, and also North Korea said it will repeal its hostile policy towards the United States in return for lifting of sanctions. And what does that imply? Anyway, Dr. Can you first of all address these comments? Yes, thank you. There were some really important comments and questions that were raised. And let me just touch upon some key important items. What we should not forget is that the Kim Jong-un regime, to maintain its power, for a totalitarian government, yes, maintaining power is vital to its survival, but it can take place in three forms. One is parity. It's about, and second is incentive. And third is, as I mentioned in Miranda and Credenda theories, it's about ideology education that makes people follow the leader voluntarily. And by doing so, North Korea would maintain the public loyalty and elite loyalty, and this would consolidate Kim Jong-un's power. And the key to this is we also have to take into consideration whether the Kim Jong-un regime will stay in power, whether it's going to collapse. So if we say that at this moment it doesn't look like he will lose his power, he was able to solidify his power for the past 10 years. And in that case, but then if the Kim Jong-un regime collapses, what could be the key element behind that? Or reversely, how come the Kim Jong-un regime is not collapsing? How come the elites are not engaged in a coup? How come the public are not opposing Kim Jong-un's rule? It's because of a strong monitoring and surveillance system in North Korea. So even with everything, with the strong surveillance and monitoring organizations in place, whether it be Kim Jong-un or some other person in the power position, the North Korean regime will not collapse. Even during, let's say that maybe a second arduous march would come to North Korea, still that will not lead to any military coup d'etat or a public uprising. So this monolithic rule that was established by Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il is maintaining its momentum to provide stability to Kim Jong-un's rule today. And as I said earlier, Kim Jong-un sought to reign of terror during the beginning of his term to consolidate his power. And what's the key national policy of North Korea? As said by Dr. Park, it's about completing North Korea's nuclear capability. Until 2017, since Kim Jong-un's rule, everything was centered on completing its nuclear capability, and all other tasks were just in service of that goal. You know, improving the economy and improving people's lives have been emphasized by Kim Jong-un, but if that was the key goal, then it would have turned everything around. So even though Kim Jong-un, everyone knows that North Korea is not able to achieve economic development because of this nuclear capability first policy. Everything else is being sacrificed for the sake of nuclear capability development, and the elites know about this. And about the reorganization of the ruling association, is that stable or unstable? I do think it has achieved stability to some extent. And then what is the meaning of getting rid of the traces of military first policy? What does the people first policy mean? Is that going to influence the North Korean ideology? So again, power has shifted from the military to party. But is this military first policy completely rooted out? So, yes, I do believe military first policy has been pushed back with Kim Jong-un in power. So if I were to just talk about the ideology itself, after Juche ideology, North Korea has not have had a key ideology to represent their country. So it's not about this ideology as we know as it is, but when we talk about North Korea, the ideology is about how it can take over the country and exercise its power. So during arduous march, when everyone was dying from hunger, North Korea put forth this military first policy to rule the country so that people would not defy against the regime. But the problem is the military's power grew too big. Its political power and its economic power became too great. And if this continues, because the military also has military powers, it can engage in a coup. So therefore, everything changes at Kim Jong-un era. Kim Jong-un weakened the power of the military and consolidated his rule centering on the party. So eradicating the military first policy is about eliminating the risks posed by the military. And it also aims at stabilizing the leader's power through strong surveillance system. So this cannot really be called ideology when we think about the definition of an ideology, but it's more close to a slogan in North Korea. So like I said, there exists no true quote-unquote ideology in North Korea. The reason why North Korea put forth the slogan of an ideology is to induce voluntary support from the people. And North Korea can always create new ideologies. So like our socialism slogan was used, the red flag ideology was used at different points of times in North Korea, and Paekdu mountain spirit was emphasized at one point, and now the people first principle or free people first ideology is being used to rule the nation. So the 주체 ideology really it doesn't have any meaning at this point. I don't think so. Yes, ideology transformations have been happening in North Korea on a frequent basis, but all of those are aimed at garnering support of the people. But the key element that the North Korean region relied on in retaining its power was the surveillance system, which is centered on the party. With regards to the reorganizing the ruling association, many cadres were purged, and that could have brought about a lot of discord and noises. But when we look at the end result now, at this moment, there is no one who can defy against Kim Jong Un. So yes, the reorganization of the ruling association do create some instabilities, but it does contribute to Kim Jong Un's maintaining his power. So surveillance, control, oppression, if all of those are alleviated at this moment, then the Kim Jong Un regime could collapse in just a few years. So when we take into account all the questions and comments that were given, so the key to North Korean politics is its nuclear capability. And as Dr. Park said, now North Korea is trying to establish a new national strategy because it has already completed its nuclear power. And, nuclear talks and nuclear negotiations are just empty talks as a matter of fact. And with regards to power, the key is about maintaining the strong surveillance system for Kim Jong Un to maintain power. If he does not have such system in place, his rule would only last for the next 3 to 5 years. Thank you so much.
Lastly, Dr. Kim, you have 3 minutes to respond. The question is that the North's demand changed suddenly to the lifting of economic sanctions. The question was, what do you think the reason behind this change in demands were? Actually, I would like to respond to your question, Mr. Moderator, about whether you see North Korea engaging any provocations anytime soon. I think North Korea is faced with a dilemma. Since Kim Il-sung, in the U.S., I think it was a long-held ambition of the North Korean regime to hold a DPRK U.S. summit to discuss the issues at hand. So there were a lot of behind-the-scenes deal to make this happen. And this very long-held ambition was finally achieved with the summit with Trump. And the dilemma is this. They finally came to a channel where they can actually take the reins to solve this issue. But now they're faced with a dilemma whether they are ready to abandon their nuclear card to maintain this channel. They have left a historical precedent. They have secured an official channel. They have secured the channel among the people. But now they're faced with the dilemma whether they can risk losing this channel that they have so wanted for so long. So I feel that it will be difficult for the North Korean regime to engage in a provocation that would really ruffle the feathers with Washington. And if the sanctions are not lifted and the Sino-US competition is maintained, then North Korea has no choice but to rely more on China. So against this backdrop, it is not in the interest of Xi Jinping or China's interest if a big provocation should occur on the Korean Peninsula. So now North Korea is mindful of this situation. So if you look at the DPRK-China relation, when the North was focused on building its nuclear program, it was much more free to do as it wished. But now it is not. So even if it were to engage in a provocation, there's a possibility that it will remain tactical and it will not be strategical. And if they do take an unexpected strategic provocation, I think it would be a sign that there is some very real internal struggle within North Korea. I think the hostile policy towards North also can be related to my presentation. North Korea talked about how it will respond power with power. North Korea pledged that it will enhance its retaliatory nuclear capabilities. And this is North Korea saying, if you do not minimize the threat against us, we will make it through the sanctions. We will rely on China, or we will starve to death. So it could be a simple strategy, but I think that it is a significant move because once this is announced, it is not just simply rhetoric. It is part of a broader national strategy. So I think that North Korea is ready to wait it out, basically, against the U.S. And also, Professor JinHa was saying, I did not really have a lot of curiosity regarding what you asked, but I think that the sanctions lifting was part of the initial agenda at the Singapore summit, but it was taken out at the last minute. So the sequence of events is that even before the Singapore summit, when they were selecting the agenda, the lifting of sanctions was not prioritized. But I think that this came to the surface later on. So for the outside experts, it seems like it was a sudden dramatic turn, but in fact it is not. Of course, I do not have a concrete evidence to back this up, but I think from North Korea's perspective, I think the end of war declaration was not as important to the North. They just simply saw it as a process towards a long-term journey toward peace. And I think that it was the South Korean government, the Moon Jae-in administration, that placed a focus on the end of war declaration. But it was not such a big deal for the North Koreans. So I think, so you can say that it was not a dramatic or sudden shift in demands from the North Koreans. And I think that perhaps South Korea had to do with that not being part of the Singapore summit. And Dr. Park talked about inside out, outside in politics. I don't think anybody can be have a clear understanding about that. But if you look at North Korea's policy, whether it's North Korea or South Korea, we have experience of colonialism, we experienced the Cold War, so we have the same historical experience, but the outcome is very difficult. And I don't think that that can be explained simply with the dynamics of the region. There are limitations to that. We went through the same experience. Why is South Korea different from North Korea? Is it because the U.S. is more powerful? I think that only offers a partial explanation. I think that it has more to do with the ideology, the historical origin of North Korea. And I think that Japanese scholars really look into this. I think that there are other roots that contributed to different outcomes on the Korean Peninsula, and perhaps we need more research on that topic. And lastly, if you look at the table that I provided, as I said, I based it on statements, speeches, and other materials to analyze his discourse. But I have to say that you can't really take this to the last detail. You can only use it to identify certain patterns because the material itself is not a big sample. And lastly, with regards to the Biden administration, I really have no idea when it comes to the Biden administration. We thought February 19th agreement or other agreements might be something that he would follow, a stepped approach, a phased approach. But I think that he is very similar to a strategic patient. I think he really has no idea what to do. And that is why the Biden administration is simply managing the situation. If the North aggravates the situation in a meaningful way, like ICBM, then the Biden administration would actually delay the process. I actually expected something substantial from the Biden administration, but so far we have nothing. And I think going forward, there would be nothing. North Korea has nuclear weapons. What can the U.S. do? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the input. So we evaluated the 10 years of the Kim Jong Un regime. We had many comments and questions raised, and they were very specific and clever answers were given to those questions. So I would like to thank the two presenters and the four discussants for making this session very lively. Thank you.